Good morning, everyone. My name is Elliot Payne. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the president of Minneapolis City Council. And today we are just in the early time of reviewing the mayor's recommended budget. What we heard from the mayor yesterday was a positive and uplifting speech about the future of our city. But I think we need to actually look at the details of this budget and actually dig into the reality and make sure that the rhetoric is matching the reality. And in my preliminary assessment, this is an austerity budget. And I think we need to be honest with our community about the hard choices that are contained within this budget, and also reflect back to our community that they own this budget and City Council will pursue the will of our community as it relates to making those hard choices that align with the values of our community. And so we are in the very early days of reviewing the budget and the details. I've already seen a number of cuts that give me some concern, and we have a process that we need to go through to make sure that the future of our city is in alignment with the values of our city. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Vice President Chuck Tai.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Aisha Chugtai. I represent Ward 10 on the Minneapolis City Council and serve as the Council Vice President and Chair of the Budget Committee. I want to start by congratulating Mayor Frey for presenting his 2026 budget recommendation yesterday. I also want to thank every single staff member who did the work to make it possible, from our finance team to department heads and everyone in between. I can tell you that completing this budget is an immense undertaking, especially in a year where I know there were a lot of difficult choices to be made. The Minneapolis City Charter grants the power of the purse to the council, and the budget process was designed to create collaboration between the executive and legislative branches, giving the mayor the opportunity to create a proposal while allowing the council ultimate authority to amend and adopt the budget. Now our work begins. The coming weeks and months will be spent thoroughly reviewing the budget and providing a transparent process in which the council will have the opportunity to learn more about the impacts to services, programs, and staff in this proposed budget. We will also spend a lot of time hearing directly from residents across the city about their needs and their thoughts on the proposal and working tirelessly to incorporate their very important feedback. After a preliminary review of the mayor's recommended budget, I want to start by saying that achieving a 7.8% levy increase instead of the projected 11.1% is important progress. And I was thrilled to see that these reductions did not include layoffs for frontline workers. I anticipate that the starting point for myself and my colleagues will be reviewing the $23 million worth of proposed cuts, some of which I know would mean gutting programs and services that are near and dear to the communities we represent and therefore a priority for this council. I want to highlight a few cuts that leave me concerned for residents who count on critical services. Despite what was stated in the budget address yesterday, many of the proposed cuts to services have a track record of delivering results. They are not untested pilot projects. They are not pet projects. This includes hundreds of thousands of dollars being cut in co-enforcement funding, which tackles wage theft and educates workers and is a critical part of the city's work in making sure compliance with our labor standards is being met. Fully gutting all base funding for the Ownership and Opportunity Fund, a program that has kept wealth in our communities and supported local entrepreneurs, leaving it unfunded but for year-to-year allocations. I'm alarmed to see reductions in mental health services and long-term disability coverage for our firefighters. They work one of the most dangerous jobs and can suffer lifelong injuries as a result of doing their job. Taking care of these workers is an obligation of the city, both for their well-being and for ensuring residents have first responders that are fully prepared to respond when they are needed. These are not untested pilots or pet projects. These are very real and very critical services. I understand that difficult decisions have to be made, but I anticipate the council's discussions with the administration will begin with these concerns. I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues to pass a people-centered budget that truly cares for our residents' needs without raising the projected levy, just as we did last year. Thank you so much. With that, I will hand it to my colleague, Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you. My name is Councilmember Chowdhury. I represent the 12th Ward. I think it's really important to be eyes wide open on this budget and understand that our constituencies will be impacted depending on these cuts. For me, as a council member who led on the budget amendment to give ongoing funding for the first time ever for co-enforcement, it's deeply disheartening to see that cut, because the people who are impacted by those cuts are going to be largely, of course, working people, but immigrant community members who are facing the worst conditions in workplaces. They're the ones that are bearing the brunt of wage theft and so many other labor violations. And in a moment where our immigrant community is under attack, it is deeply concerning that we are seeing such important funding being cut that has taken many years of fighting in order to get just in our last city budget. I am making a commitment to our community, to the constituents in our city, to the local businesses in our city, that we are going to be very deliberative as a city council. We are going to take our time with this budget. We are going to give some much needed transparency to this process and communicate with constituents. That is a role of the city council, and we are going to have to make tough decisions, but we aren't going to shy away from sharing what those are. I think it's very easy in an election year to be compelled to paint a rosy picture about a tough budget where there is 23 million cuts, but that's not what this city council is going to do. We're going to have an open and honest conversation about our city budget, because a budget ultimately is a moral document, and we want to make sure that we are setting our city up to be resilient, especially as we have a hostile federal government that is taking actions every single day that are unpredictable, that have real impacts at the local level. Next, I will introduce my colleague, Councilmember Wansley.
Good morning, everyone. I am Councilmember Robin Wansley, and I represent Ward 2 on the Minneapolis City Council. I want to first say thank you to Budget Chair, Council Vice President Chektai, for your leadership as we head into another year of the budget process. Over the past several years, Council has worked closely with the community to ensure that the city budget invests in programs and services that matter most to them. Last year, in fact, our Senior Advisory Committee helped us as a body understand the challenges that residents face when they want to age in place, stay in their homes, essentially. And we worked with them to fund a program that gives small grants and loans to seniors to make sure that their homes are up to code and are livable and safe, and supportive places to age without having to move or leave their communities. Another example was our emergency housing vouchers program, which was also reflected in the $23 million worth of cuts that Mayor Frey proposed as of yesterday. And this program was an exciting and new partnership between the City of Minneapolis, Hennepin County, Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, and through this partnership, it would have provided permanent housing and wraparound services to 50 individuals and 50 families who are experiencing chronic homelessness, which we know is a predominant issue and has been a predominant issue impacting so many residents across the city. And this investment stemmed directly from the priorities that we hear, from the concerns that we hear from our residents who have wanted city leaders to partner with local government agencies to be responsive to our ongoing homelessness crisis and to have a effective solution that gets those residents into the housing that they need and connected to the services that they need to lead productive lives and to start a strong foundation for recovery. We also hear every year from residents that snow and ice make sidewalks inaccessible to pedestrians, to our elders, to residents with disabilities, to those who have strollers because they have families and have to navigate the city. We heard that concern for several years of how to make our sidewalks more accessible during the winter months. So council worked with the administration to pilot 3 new programs that will plow our sidewalks and make them more accessible to our residents who don't have the means to get around with a car. And the first year went great. The Frey administration gave a recent report out on the steady and supportive progress that is being made with that pilot just earlier this spring. And residents themselves have been praising the huge impact that this has had on their lives in making our city more accessible to them. Yesterday, we learned that Mayor Frey is also proposing to cut that initiative as well, which also is not untested. His staff gave a progress report on that, as I mentioned, just a few months ago that showed great progress being made. And I know that there are residents that are out there in our city who are seeing the proposed cuts and are thinking, what does this mean for me, for my family, for my neighborhood, who absolutely rely on these services? And to those residents, I want to make sure that you know that council has your back. Council's job is to ensure that the final budget reflects the residents' priorities and their needs, and to meet residents' needs, as we've done in the past, just with this most recent budget cycle, meeting those needs without having to increase financial burden upon them as well through the levy. And so I look forward, as my colleagues shared before me, towards meeting those needs, bringing forward a budget that is people-centered and that is also not going to raise the levy in the way that is going to exacerbate financial impacts on working-class residents who are already feeling the brunt of the impacts of our hostile federal government as they're making cuts to critical social services and programs. So I look forward to working with my colleagues in the coming months to bring a budget that is reflective of our city and its most pressing needs. And I look forward to making sure that we do what we can to restore and save those programs that our most vulnerable residents rely on. So thank you. And with that, we stand for questions.
All right, we're ready for questions.
Does it look like there are targeted cuts to certain boards or anything?
We are really early in the process. I don't know that we are seeing targeted cuts in certain wards. We are seeing significant cuts to programs that our residents rely on, as we've highlighted.
Or maybe certain council members' projects maybe is a better word.
You know, I think that the most significant cuts we are seeing are to programs in housing that address homelessness and to programs that support working people in improving their lives.
Can you clarify about for example, the housing voucher program? I mean, like that was presented as, certainly not a pet project in the sense that pet project has like pork barrel project kind of connotations, but if it wasn't actually enacted because there are no, like if no vouchers were given out because there's no capacity to give them out, so I'm wondering if you can give more detail.
Yeah, I'm going to have Councilmember Wansley address that.
Yes. So for over a year, the city of Minneapolis, the county, and the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority worked together to even enter into a financial agreement that was just a week away from being signed to say that we are going to get these dollars out and get these vouchers implemented and start getting people housed. I have an email from the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority giving us an update that said that there were stalling efforts amongst the city side that created delays in the implementation of that. And the money was there. There should not have been any delays whatsoever. And when we received a presentation from staff on this, they said it would be possible to get these vouchers out by the fall. The county was ready. The Minneapolis Public Housing Authority was ready. It's the city and the administration, Mayor Frey administration, that has posed the challenges towards that when there was not necessary. So the money is there. Council provided that after a year and a half of conversations, and it's still able to be administered. Again, those partners are ready to get those vouchers out the door.
And just to be clear, those vouchers, you believe they're going away. They're not going to be given out within the new stable homes, stable schools program.
Those are two separate programs. These are completely separate programs. Emergency housing vouchers has a different set of partners and a different goal, and stable homes, stable schools has a whole separate scope of focus, and there's no need to pit those two programs against each other. We can support both. Yes.
And Kyle, as I told you yesterday, we talked about this, so I'll repeat it again. Two separate programs, Stable Home, Stable Schools, supports our youth and our public schools, and the Emergency Housing Vouchers is a completely separate program that we talked about yesterday, so I'm glad to repeat that again. And the important thing here is that last year, the Minneapolis City Council lowered the mayor's proposed levy while still funding the Emergency Housing Vouchers and funding to expand Stable Homes and Stable Schools. So what we're saying is we can do both. We can reduce the levy if we need to. We can fund stable homes and stable schools and expand that, and we can support emergency housing vouchers. So we can't just say that we're moving a funding from one program to another and then completely eliminating emergency housing vouchers that should be implemented by this administration, to be very clear. We need an executive that is going to actually implement ordinances, funding, and actions taken by the city council, because that is how things are supposed to happen in a functioning democracy in this country.
So what do you make of the mayor, I guess, saying that the program, the Stable Homes, Stable Schools, is facing a budget shortfall? Is that correct still, and is that an issue you guys are looking at fixing?
Yeah, so across the ecosystem that is built around supporting people who are experiencing any form of homelessness, whether it's the ecosystem that exists at the government level or one that exists among our partners in the nonprofit sector and service providers. Everybody is facing budget shortfalls, and every program is at risk. As my colleagues have said, this is not the time for us to be picking and choosing winners and losers. This is the time for us to be investing in programs that are meaningfully helping people stabilize their lives, move into permanent housing, and we believe that looks like both a fully funded Stable Homes, Stable Schools program along with a fully funded emergency housing vouchers program.
And with looking for that budget proposal, did you see any other initiatives that you feel shouldn't be funded as much as they are?
I think we are right now. Our priority is looking through cuts and seeing where cuts are going to impact our residents and basic services that our residents are relying on.
Are you supportive of a levy increase of 7.8%? Does that levy increase number meet your expectations, or are you going to be pushing for a different level?
That is ultimately a decision for the Board of Estimate and Taxation to make, which will include significant conversations around the levy allocation for the Park Board. You may remember that was the subject of a lot of discussion last year. So I would hope that we can reach a maximum levy that funds our basic park services and our recommended budget.
Do you think it's, put it another way, given what happened last year at the very end of the process where we got down to 6.89, is it possible that we could get lower than 7.8, or is that not responsible?
All options are on the table. I mean, I think we, like last year, we're going to look at this budget and we're going to make sure to both reduce the impact of property taxes on residents to the furthest extent possible and ensure that our basic frontline services are fully funded.
Are you seeing any cuts to the 7 budget amendments that you guys some passed at the end of the year? Are you seeing a lot of those cuts?
A lot of the programs we talked about today, from emergency housing vouchers to co-enforcement funding to snow and ice removal to senior housing code abatement, stemmed from budget amendments led by the council. Those are programs that have seen significant cuts or have been fully eliminated.
Who led the housing voucher?
Councilmember Wansley.
Are you on board with the cuts to MPD overtime?
Can I get clarity
Absolutely.
on that?
Or I guess just not renewing the double time?
Yeah, I think that's important to lay out for the public record. The overtime, double overtime, was a letter of agreement that we entered into with the Minneapolis Police Federation that was set to expire in December of this year. And we're right now starting the process for renegotiations with the Police Federation for the police contract. The body is already having numerous meetings with the administration in preparation for the next police contract. That might be a priority that's discussed, but this idea that Mayor Frey proactively cut overtime is not actually factual. It was an LOA that was set to expire, and we need to be accurate in how we're presenting information like our police contracts and not inflating it.
Do you agree with the notion that the mayor put forward that the MPD is bolstering its numbers, it's at a better place than it was before, and that's another reason why not to renew double overtime, because they have enough people to not do so?
I can't speak to the part around recruitment numbers and how that relates to overtime. What we do know is for several years now, MPD has faced a budget increase when it's come to overtime. And that, of course, has impacts on our overall budget. And I think we're looking at, again, all the ways in which we can be fiscally responsible, look at areas where we can roll back and reduce spending or redirect that spending to other critical priorities. And that's why we're even looking at other solutions like we're passing off duty or looking at taking up off duty just next week, which has the ability to take up to $1.4 million off of taxpayers' shoulders right now that are currently subsidizing MPD side hustles. So that's another avenue where we're looking to save money while also regulating a very problematic part of our public safety system, in addition to concerns around, overtime and other aspects that's going to be considered in the police contract. So once again, the Police Federation, because this is part of the police contract, are fully aware that the letter of agreement is set to expire in December. Both parties had to come to the table and agree with it, and that's the contract that council passed.
Do you guys have any concern about the 5-year forecast?
I'm sorry,
Maybe this is a question for the budget chair, but are you at all concerned that we're pushing the pain out further, with these levy down? Obviously, you want to bring it down as low as you can, but are we just postponing some budget pain?
Yeah, I see the question you're asking, Dina. It is, I think the piece of this that I'm most concerned with is the discrepancy in the 5-year levy projection, right? So when we adopted the budget last year, the levy projection for 2026 was 11.1%. Yesterday in the mayor's budget address, he talked about levy projection at 13%. So I'm concerned actually about the discrepancy in the 5-year projection versus the reality of where those projections actually are. And I think that's something that we will continue to keep a close eye on and monitor and understand as we are investigating this budget in the coming months.
I would add something to that.
Go ahead.
She said 11.1.
11.1.
Yeah. I would add, just like the broader context when we're looking at a 5-year projection, is that we're living in a very chaotic time. We are seeing significant cuts to federal housing programs, which is trickling down to these levy pressures for us as we're looking to support our community when it comes to housing, as we discussed with the housing voucher and stable homes, stable schools. But we're also running out of actual accurate data at the federal level. The president fired the BLS director and put in place somebody who wants to abolish the BLS. So how are we supposed to have accurate predictions when we're in a climate where both the federal government is pulling back on resources and pulling back on a commitment to transparency? And that's the thing we want to actually emphasize, is that our community can handle challenging circumstances. Every family in Minneapolis has had to navigate some of the most challenging times in their personal lives. They know that the city has the same decisions that it needs to make, and we need to be honest and transparent with them about those decisions. And I think that's what's missing here, especially in the rhetoric.
And I think it's important to talk about, yesterday in the Public Health and Safety Committee, Councilmember Wansley and Council President Payne are leading the City Council and the city to recoup the cost of off-duty. I think when we're looking at these 5-year projections, the city needs to be more proactive about how we're going to recoup more costs in the city enterprise. The off-duty component is an important part as we look into the future of how we're going to be a responsible government. I also note that Councilmember Wansley and Council President Payne led the City Council in studying how we can diversify our revenue streams in the city of Minneapolis. That includes taxing the rich, and that is important as we look to the future of Minneapolis to ensure that we have the funding necessary to keep city services intact and protect our most vulnerable community members that are being targeted not only by the Trump administration, but facing the impacts of potential budget cuts here in the city enterprise. So the City Council has been really proactive in exploring different revenue streams.
Awesome. With that, we'll take your last question.
Has the mayor gotten any better at working with the council? Last year, obviously, he vetoed the budget. There was a lot of talk, but he's not. And some of the priorities that were given to him in the meetings, some of them were not in the budget he proposed. Has that gotten any better?
This is a council that is always, always, always willing to roll up our sleeves and come to the table and collaborate with the mayor and with the administration to do the work of serving the community we all ultimately represent. I sincerely hope that this year we will see a commitment from the mayor and the administration to come to the table and work with us instead of, walking away as they often did last cycle. And in that, they will find really strong partners here on the council. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.